You guys coming back? We down Lindell hear that you're very smart up this way. What Silver Age poet begins a poem with the three Latin words, Odi et amo? Okay. She knows, I know, I can see it. She's smiling. There's a fellow named Catullus, and he has this girl that he names Lesbia, and he loves her, and he can't stand her. Odi et amo. I hate her, and I love her. Or do you remember St. Augustine? About 300 years later, he writes in his famous Confessions, "Oh God, give me chastity, but not yet." It's not funny. Neither Catullus nor Augustine will be happy because their hearts are divided. Catullus wants Lesbia and he doesn't want her. Augustine wants to be chaste, but not really. I do this all the time. Lord, I want to be healthy with a great physique, but I also want that pizza. Lord, I want to be a saint, but I'm going to sleep in today. You and I are people divided. And the reason that you and I oftentimes find life stressful, frustrating, lonely, confusing, is because we're not yet integrated around one good. We hear today that we cannot serve both God and mammon. And like you, I'm sitting here wondering, what is mammon? I don't know. It's a Hebrew word. It does have to do with wealth, but it has to do with more than that. It has to do with anything that opposes God. And we don't like to admit it, but throughout our lifetime, friends, you and I can be very good polytheists. We can have different gods in our lives at different times. When we're young, it can be liberation, just doing whatever the crowd is doing. When we get to high school or college, it can be grades. It can be the honor that comes with succeeding in whatever is put before us. It could become eros in our romantic life, and we serve that alone. I remember once in college, I grew up just a little bit. A friend of mine was late on a date, and she was very apologetic. And I said, you know what? This is on YouTube, isn't it? You know what, George? I said, you can do no wrong in my eyes. Now, don't take dating advice from me, because you see how well that went. But she said to me, I can't be that for you, and I don't want to be that for you. If I'm wrong, you need to tell me. That if this relationship is going to go anywhere, we need to hold each other accountable toward what is good. And at that moment in the car, I can remember that I had this just feeling that I grew up just a little bit more. That I realized that she was right. That the second we make any creature an end in itself, the second we say to any creature, any endeavor, any activity, you can do no wrong. You are an absolute. You are where I'm going to put my lifeblood and all my time and energy. We've made that creature into a god. And not the kind of God that liberates us, a God that ultimately destroys us. This is where addictions come from. This is where low self-esteem comes from. This is the confusion and the doubt that can really consume you at 3 a.m. as you're wondering what it's all about. We cannot serve both God and mammon. That if you think that your life is meant for grades, you're always going to feel 11th in your class. If you think that you're made for money, you're always going to feel poor. There's always going to be somebody down Lindell with a little bit more. If you think you're made for romance, you're always going to feel unloved. If you think you're made for popularity, you're always going to feel uninvited to just that one right party. That you and I are made in the image and likeness of God, Genesis says. And whenever we try to serve anything other than God, we will always be consumed. Our hearts will remain fragmented, and we will never truly be happy. But when we serve God, we're serving the one for whom we have been made. And when things are divided, what do we need? We need glue to bring them back. We need something in the middle to unite them. And that's why Paul says tonight, look, there's only one God. Money, success, eros, those aren't gods. Don't let them be. But this God has also become like us, the mediator, Jesus Christ. Now think about what mediation means. It means we get the best of both worlds. We have a God who is also human. Think if you went to the doctor, right? You wouldn't want a doctor who had all the answers but who didn't know how to approach you. Right? You had a really smart wash you kid, but kind of dorky and no bedside manner. Now wait, I'll get to the slew kids. You don't want a doctor like that stands out in the hall and is afraid to get too close because you're sick, right? But you don't want the slew kid either, who has no answers but is willing to put his arm around you. You sneeze, I'll sneeze too, okay. We want both. And that's precisely what we'll profess in just a few minutes. God from God, light from light, true God from true God. But through the power of the Holy Spirit and the freedom and the yes of Our Lady, He becomes human. And that's what makes us Christians. The fact that God is not out there. The fact that God is not spirit and abstract. What makes us Christians is the fact that God has emptied Himself of power, divinity, and heaven to become one of us. And so when we say we can't serve both God and mammon, that doesn't mean that we need to be simply in this chapel all the time thinking religious thoughts. That because God has become human, there's no way back to God now except through the human. And that's why we had the reading from Amos tonight. Is your life divided into one about God on Sunday mornings and your wallet and your checking account the rest of the week? Or in Paul, we hear in the second reading, pray for your leaders. Is your life divided into God on Sunday morning and your political life throughout the rest of the week? St. Ignatius of Loyola begins his spiritual exercises, this little book that tries to help us grow in freedom with this line. The human person is created to praise, reverence, and serve God, and thereby save your soul. If you ever wonder what life's about, if you ever wonder what the meaning of your existence is, Ignatius tells you right from the get-go. You are created to praise, reverence, and serve God, and thereby save your soul. And the next line, everything else, therefore, is on the face of this earth to help you attain the end for which you've been created. Everything. Not just the convent, not just the seminary, not just the church. Everything. That all things can speak to you of God. This is the kind of unity that Christ is after in the gospel. You can't serve both God and mammon. But you can find God in mammon. You can find God in your earthly pursuits if you allow God to be there. To ask yourself, why is it I want to get good grades? Why is it I want to go to med school, law school? Why do I want to get married? Is it out of fear? Is it out of a need to have a clear label and identity? Or is it because you sense God's voice propelling you, inviting you to find Him in all things? This is the joy to living a Christian life. Not having to choose between God and mammon, but letting God become the standard, the measure by which we understand love and grades and wealth. Never letting any creature become an end in itself, but always letting God be the one to inform us, to guide us, to lead us. And how do we do that? First off, friends, prayer. You're young, you have energy, you have some time during the day. If I checked your Facebook accounts, I could probably argue for that, right? You could find 5 to 8 minutes a day simply to be intentionally silent. You could find the gospel for the Mass that day on a website, in a missal. Gary's not here, take something out of his office. Right? Every day the Catholic Church has a gospel. We're working our way through the Gospel of Luke. Maybe you could read that, pray over it. Ask yourself, where do I see myself in this story? What does this gospel have to do with me and my life? You have to pray, friends. You're not going to get to heaven by halves, St. Therese of Lisieux says. It's all or nothing. We can't serve both God and mammon. We all want to be great, but do we really want to cooperate with God's grace? You know Van Cliburn, the great pianist? After a concert, somebody came up to him and says, "I would give my life to play like that." And he says, "I did." When you and I look at the saints who have been created to praise, reverence, and serve God, we all think, "I'd love to be like that." Really? I know most days I don't. I hope at the end of my life I become like that, but it's not going to be magic. It starts now, and it starts with prayer. And you and I live in a very busy world with a very chaotic calendar, and we have to be intentional about finding some silence and lifting our minds to the Lord. And secondly, these sacraments. To avail yourself of Mass, not only on Sundays if you could, but throughout the week. Maybe even a regular holy hour somewhere. Monthly confession, maybe, if you sin. Okay, monthly confession. All right. But the church is offering you so many channels of grace. But thirdly, surround yourself with good people. Prayer groups, Bible studies, reading groups. Just maybe go for a walk to talk about what's important. To elevate things from the superficial, to really get to the level of the heart. This is where we discover what is truly of importance to us, and this is where we find out what our false gods are. In our prayer with the God Himself, but also in communication with God's people. So as this new year is unfolding quickly, I ask you to look at those three areas of your life. How am I praying? Do I even know how to pray? Well, talk to somebody in the red shirt. They know how to pray. What about liturgy, sacraments? Do you understand why the church celebrates what she does? And thirdly, do you have any kind of Christian Catholic support here? Do you have people with whom you can show a little of your heart, to be honest with, and to understand where God is calling you? Because you and I can't serve both God and mammon. But we can use the mammon in our lives to find God. And even more importantly, allow Him to find us.